Should you be focusing your activities around the most profitable things in your business? Hi, I'm DJ from Rainbow Dragon Digital. In today's video, I want to talk about the ethics around focusing on the profit-making part of your business, especially when you're under financial pressure. If you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel already, please do. It will help me out loads. And if you click the bell, you'll be notified when I release new videos. So I had a meeting with a client, and there's a tiny bit of financial pressure going on in the business at the moment. And so they wanted to talk a little bit around strategy, what we should focus on, where we can, ease up things so that the financial pressure isn't there, so that they can go off and focus on the things that they want to do that aren't quite money making yet, but they want to do them. And the point being that there was financial pressure, and the temptation at that point was to focus on the activities that were making the most profit. And the activities that were making the most profit were not quite focused on the ultimate goals that they want, the kind of societal goals, the mission of the business. It's not super tightly focused on that, and so there's a question of how much they would want to focus on it. That temptation, that desire to focus on the profit-making part of your business, especially when you're under financial pressure, when you're in this survival mode, this seems logical, and it is what most business strategists, I think, would suggest you do, is get the money in, survive first, and then you can worry about your ethics later. I would argue that there's a very slippery slope you're sliding down, and before you know it, you could find yourself immersed in this business that is doing things that you don't want to be doing, that is running things in a way that doesn't align with your values, and suddenly you're at the head of this business that is not aligned with your values because you've focused on the bit that makes money. My second principle when I sat down to do freelance marketing was profit is fuel, not purpose. So I want to emphasize that profit is not unimportant, and it's not a thing you should ignore, but it is not the thing that you should prioritize. And I think the barrier I come up against a lot of the time when discussing this is, but what happens when you're under financial pressure? That's what matters the most, is the profit. And I would argue that it's at that moment that you should be most careful not to focus on profit. Because it is at that point that you will be making the decision that affects the rest of the business, that affects the rest of the lifetime of the business. Maybe not in every case, but it is very, very common that the businesses that focus entirely on profit started from a place of surviving by focusing on profit. And I think if you take a moment to step back at that point where you're under financial pressure and really consciously bring forward in your mind the standards that you don't want to compromise on for the sake of profit, consciously bring that forward and reestablish that boundary at that point, you will find other solutions. You will look for other solutions rather than sacrificing your values and your ethics to make that profit. In the case of this client that I'm talking about, they were They edit a lot of content. Most of their things, the product is content, and they have video editors. And so the question was, how long are the video editors spending on it? And is it worth the time for them to spend all that time editing the video and getting things exactly the way they want it to look? Is that worth it? Are we making money from that? And the discussion that we had was, well, this is your art. Is it worth it to make the art the way you want it to be, right? And what the conclusion was of our discussion was that they would have a meeting with the other video editors, and they would come to an agreement with the other video editors about what's the creative standard that we don't want to compromise on. What's the minimum creative standard that we're going to meet in order to publish a video. And that's what needs to be worked out, and then you can start discussing whether it's worth it for profit or not. But there has to be that standard that you don't want to compromise on. I think I want to leave this particular video on a kind of phrase that you can remember when it comes to this. And I came across this phrase. Somebody was teaching it once further back in my career. They said that employees need to shape themselves around the business rather than the other way around. And I really disliked that turn of phrase and that attitude. I feel like what's way more important is that the business should shape itself around your standards and not the other way around. So I'll leave you with that phrase. The business should shape itself around your standards and not the other way around. And I'll leave you to think about that and think about what are the standards in your business? What are you unwilling to compromise on? And what will you find creative solutions for in order to make sure that you maintain those standards?